Jade Rivers clutched her worn leather portfolio against her chest as the glass elevator climbed to the 42nd floor of Blackwood Industries. Her reflection in the polished doors showed a young woman trying too hard to look professional. In a thrift store blazer and carefully mended skirt, the secretary position wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough to help with David's college tuition and mounting medical bills. The elevator dinged softly, opening to reveal a reception area. That screamed expensive taste. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings, and original artwork adorned walls of pristine white marble. Jade's heels clicked nervously on the polished floor as she approached the reception desk. "Jade Rivers," she announced to the impeccably dressed woman behind the mahogany desk. "Hey, I'm here for the 3 o'clock interview." The receptionist's smile was perfect and cold. "Mr. Blackwood is waiting for you. Top floor, corner office." Jade's heart skipped. She was supposed to interview with human resources, not the CEO himself. Marcus Blackwood was legendary in business. Circle's brilliant, ruthless, devastatingly handsome, according to the magazine covers. She'd glimpsed at grocery store checkouts. The corner office was a testament to power and wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city. And the space was furnished with pieces that belonged in a museum. Behind an imposing desk sat Marcus Blackwood himself, reviewing documents with laser focus. He looked up as she entered, and Jade felt her breath catch. The magazines hadn't done him justice. Dark hair was styled perfectly, framing a face with sharp cheekbones and intense green eyes that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed facade. His charcoal suit was obviously tailored to his athletic frame. "Miss Rivers," he said, his voice deep and commanding. "Please sit." Jade settled into the leather chair across from his desk, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Blackwood. I'm very interested in the secretary position." A ghost of a smile played at the corners of his mouth. "I'm not hiring a secretary, Miss Rivers. I'm looking for a wife." The words hit her like a physical blow. She gripped the arms of her chair, certain she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying her with those penetrating eyes. "A wife. For 1 year. Purely business, of course. In exchange, you'll receive $200,000 in full medical coverage for your family." Jade's mind reeled. How did he know about David's condition? How did he know about her family's financial struggles? I don't understand. Why would you need to buy a wife? "My father's will stipulates that I must be married by my 33rd birthday to retain control of Blackwood Industries. That's in 6 months. My stepmother Victoria is counting on my failure so she can seize control of the company." His expression hardened. "I won't let that happen." The amount he'd mentioned echoed in Jade's head. $200,000 would solve everything. David's surgery, his medication, their mother's mortgage. But the idea of marrying a stranger, even for money, seemed impossible. "Why me?" she whispered. Marcus stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "You need the money, and I need someone who won't develop inconvenient emotional attachments. Someone practical. No. Someone who understands this is strictly business." Jade found herself studying his profile against the city skyline. There was something lonely about the way he stood there, like a king surveying his kingdom from a very cold throne. "I need time to think," Jade managed, her voice barely steady. Marcus turned from the window, his expression unreadable. "Time is a luxury neither of us has, Miss Rivers. Your brother's surgery is scheduled for next month, isn't it? And the experimental treatment he needs afterward." The blood drained from Jade's face. "How do you know about that?" "I make it my business to know everything about people I'm considering for important positions." He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the spacious office. "This isn't charity, Jade. May I call you Jade? This is a mutually beneficial arrangement." She nodded numbly, still processing how much he knew about her private life. "The contract would be for exactly 1 year. 1 year? You'll live in my penthouse, attend social functions as my wife, and maintain the facade of a loving marriage in public? In private, you'll have your own space and complete freedom, as long as you're discreet. He returned to his desk and pulled out a thick document. Everything is outlined here, including the financial arrangements. Jade flipped through the pages, her eyes widening at the numbers. Not only was there the lump sum payment, but also a generous monthly allowance, full medical coverage for her entire family, and a trust fund for David's education. "This is too much," she said softly. "It's exactly what I need to pay to ensure this works." Marcus sat on the edge of his desk, closer than was professionally appropriate. "I won't lie to you, Jade. This won't be easy. Victoria will scrutinize everything we do, looking for cracks in our story. The media will be relentless. You'll need to become someone else entirely." Despite her fear, Jade felt a flicker of defiance. "You mean become someone worthy of Marcus Blackwood?" Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps even respect. "I mean become someone who can handle being in the spotlight. Someone who can convince the world that Marcus Blackwood fell in love." The word love hung between them, heavy with implication. Jade thought about David's pale face in the hospital bed, about the stack of medical bills on their kitchen table, about her mother's sleepless nights spent worrying about money. "If I agree," she said carefully, "what exactly would you expect? From me as your wife?" Marcus's eyes darkened slightly. "In public, you'll need to be affectionate. Hold my hand, let me kiss you. Look at me like you're madly in love. The whole world needs to believe this is real. And in private, we maintain professional boundaries, separate bedrooms, separate lives. Think of it as an extended acting job." Jade closed the contract and met his gaze. "What happens after the year is up? We divorce quietly. I retain control of my company. You walk away financially secure, and we both get what we need." It sounded so simple, so clinical, but as Jade looked at Marcus Blackwood, she wondered if anything involving this man could ever be simple. Was an intensity about him that made her pulse quicken, a magnetic pull that she knew could be dangerous. "I'll need to explain this to my family somehow," she said finally. "Tell them you met someone, a whirlwind romance. People will believe what they want to believe." Marcus stood and extended his hand. "Do we have a deal, Mrs. Blackwood?" The title sent a shiver through her. Jade stared at his outstretched hand, knowing that taking it would change everything. But David needed that surgery, and her family needed security. She placed her hand in his, feeling the warmth and strength of his grip. "We have a deal, Mr. Blackwood." His smile was the first genuine one she'd seen from him. "Marcus. From now on, it's Marcus." 3 weeks later, Jade stood in the master closet of Marcus's penthouse, staring at racks of designer clothing that had appeared as if by magic. Nina, Marcus's assistant, had arranged for a complete wardrobe transformation. Turning Jade from struggling graduate into a billionaire's wife, the penthouse itself was breathtaking, all modern lines and expensive materials. With a terrace that overlooked the glittering city, her bedroom was larger than her family's entire apartment, complete with a marble bathroom and a view that never failed to take her breath away. "The charity gala is tonight," Marcus said from the doorway, making her jump. He'd been traveling for business most of the past few weeks, leaving her to adjust to her new life with Nina's guidance. Seeing him again sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. He looked devastating in his black tuxedo, the formal wear emphasizing his broad shoulders and lean frame. Jade tried to ignore the way her pulse quickened when his eyes traveled over her figure in the emerald green gown Nina had selected. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Thank you." Jade smoothed the silk skirt, still unused to wearing clothes that cost more than she used to make in a month. "Nina briefed me on tonight's event. I think I'm ready." Marcus stepped closer, and she caught the subtle scent of his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her want to lean into him. "Remember, we've been married for 3 weeks? We're still in the honeymoon phase. People will expect us to be unable to keep our hands off each other." It's the reminder of their performance sent heat rushing to Jade's cheeks. They'd practiced at home, brief touches and casual affection. But tonight would be their first public appearance as husband and wife. "I won't let you down," she promised. Marcus reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gentle touch making her breath catch. I know you won't. The gala was everything Jade had imagined high society events would be. Crystal chandeliers, flowing champagne, and beautiful people in expensive clothes, making polite conversation about important causes. Marcus was in his element, commanding attention wherever they went, but his hand never left the small of her back, a possessive touch that made her feel claimed. Marcus, darling, a woman's voice cut through the crowd like a blade. Victoria Blackwood approached them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was stunning in the way that only money could buy, perfectly maintained blonde hair, flawless skin, and a figure that defied her 50-something years. Victoria. Marcus replied coolly, I'd like you to meet my wife, Jade. Victoria's ice blue eyes assessed Jade like a predator sizing up prey. How lovely to finally meet you, dear. Tell me, how did you and Marcus meet? Jade had rehearsed this story, but under Victoria's penetrating stare, the words almost stuck in her throat. At a coffee shop near the university, I was studying, and Marcus was there reading financial reports. Spilled coffee on my textbook. How romantic, Victoria purred, her tone suggesting she found it anything but. And such a whirlwind courtship. 3 months from coffee shop to altar is quite ... efficient. Al Marcus's arm tightened around Jade's waist. When you know, he said, pressing a kiss to Jade's temple that sent warmth spiraling through her. Indeed. Victoria's smile turned predatory. I do hope you're prepared for the challenges of being a Blackwood wife, Jade. This family has such high standards. Before Jade could respond, Marcus led her away, his jaw tight with anger. Don't let her get under your skin, he murmured, as they moved to a quieter corner of the ballroom. She hates me, Jade said. She hates anyone who threatens her plans. Marcus turned to face her fully, his hand settling on her waist. Dance with me. The orchestra was playing something soft and romantic. Marcus pulled her onto the dance floor, one hand splayed across her back, the other holding hers against his chest. This close, she could see golden flecks in his green eyes and the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. You're doing perfectly, he said as they swayed together. Jade tried to focus on the compliment rather than the way his body felt against hers. This doesn't feel like acting. Something flickered in his expression. What does it feel like? The honest answer would have been dangerous territory. Instead, she smiled and said, like, I'm playing a part I was born to play. Marcus spun her gently, then pulled her back against him, closer than before. Good, he said, his voice rough, because everyone's watching, and they need to believe we're completely in love. But as the music swelled around them and Marcus's eyes held hers with an intensity that made her knees weak, Jade wondered if the line between performance and reality was beginning to blur. 2 months into their marriage, Jade was beginning to understand the subtle rhythms of life with Marcus Blackwood. He was up before dawn, working out in his private gym, then disappearing into his home office for hours of calls and meetings. She'd established her own routine, morning runs through the nearby park. Afternoons spent reading or video calling with David. Evenings often alone as Marcus attended business dinners. But tonight was different. A thunderstorm had knocked out power in several city blocks, leaving the penthouse lit only by candles and the glow from the fireplace. Jade found Marcus in his study, jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up, working by lamplight on his laptop, running on battery power. Backup generator should kick in soon, she said from the doorway, carrying 2 cups of tea. Marcus looked up, running a hand through his hair. Thank you. I should have this presentation finished before my morning. Meeting Jade, set his tea on the desk and noticed the tension in his shoulders. Without thinking, she moved behind his chair and placed her hands on his neck. Feeling the knots of stress beneath his skin, Marcus went completely still. Jade, ... You're going to give yourself a headache, she said softly, beginning to massage. The tight muscles, just relax. For a moment, he resisted, but then she felt him give in to her touch, a soft sound escaping his lips. Her hands worked along his shoulders, and she was hyper-aware of his warmth, the way his breathing changed under her ministrations. Better, she asked after several minutes. Marcus caught her wrist, turning in his chair to look at her. The candlelight played across his features, making him look younger, more vulnerable. Much better. They were close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of responsibility he carried. Without the armor of his expensive suits and commanding presence, he looked almost human. "You work too hard," she said. "It's what I do." His thumb traced across her knuckles, a gentle caress that sent shivers up her arm. "What I've always done." It's even before Victoria's threat. Marcus released her hand, but didn't look away. "My father built this company from nothing. When he died, I was 23 and completely unprepared. Victoria was already circling like a vulture, waiting for me to fail. I couldn't let that happen." The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't the confident billionaire who commanded boardrooms and charity galas. This was a man who'd been carrying the weight of the world since he was barely older than David. "Is that why you never married for real?" she asked softly. Something shuddered in his expression. "Marriage requires trust. In my world, trust is a luxury I can't afford." The words stung more than they should have. Jade took a step back, reminding herself that their arrangement was temporary, that getting emotionally involved would only complicate things. But as she looked at Marcus in the candlelight, she realized her feelings were already far more complicated than she'd intended. The next morning brought troubling news. Nina burst into the penthouse looking uncharacteristically flustered. "Been digging into Jade's background," she announced, without preamble. "She's hired a private investigator." Marcus's expression hardened. "What has she found?" "Nothing concrete yet, but she's asking questions about the timeline of your relationship. About Jade's financial situation before the marriage." Nina glanced apologetically at Jade. "She knows about David's medical bills." Jade felt cold dread settle in her stomach. "What does that mean?" "It means she's looking for proof that our marriage is a business arrangement," Marcus said grimly. "If she can prove fraud, I could lose everything," Jade finished, "and I could face criminal charges." Marcus moved to her side immediately, his hands framing her face. "That won't happen. I won't let it happen." It's the intensity in his voice. The way he touched her made Jade's heart race. But before she could respond, Nina cleared her throat. "There's more. She's planning something for the Blackwood Industries anniversary gala next week. She's been very vocal about wanting to make a speech." "Over my dead body," Marcus growled. Marcus." Jade said carefully, "Maybe we should consider ending this now, before things get worse." His hands tightened on her face. "No, we see this through. But if Victoria exposes us, she won't." Marcus's eyes blazed with determination. "Because by the time she tries, everyone will believe what we've built here is real." Jade searched his face, looking for clues about what he meant. "What are you saying?" Marcus leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "I'm saying we make this so convincing that even Victoria's private investigator won't be able to find cracks in our story." The air between them crackled with tension. Jade was acutely aware of his hands on her skin, the way he was looking at her like she was something precious and worth fighting for. "How do we do that?" she whispered. Marcus's answer was to kiss her, not the careful performative kisses they'd shared in public, but something desperate and consuming. Jade melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as 6 months of carefully maintained boundaries crumbled around them. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "Like that," he said roughly, "we make it real." The Blackwood Industries Anniversary Gala was the event of the season. The ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel glittered with crystal and gold, filled with the most powerful people in business and politics. Jade felt like she was walking into a battlefield dressed in couture. Her gown was a masterpiece of midnight blue silk that hugged every curve, with diamonds at her throat and ears that Marcus had insisted she wear. "You look like a queen," he'd said when she emerged from her dressing room, and the heat in his eyes had made her feel like one. Since their kiss 3 days ago, everything between them had changed. The careful distance they'd maintained had evaporated, replaced by stolen moments and touches that set her skin on fire. They hadn't crossed all the lines yet, but Jade knew they were dancing on the edge of something that would change everything. "Remember?" Marcus murmured as they entered the ballroom, his hand possessive on her lower back. Tonight we're celebrating our love story. Victoria was holding court near the bar, resplendent in red silk and surrounded by admirers. Her eyes found them immediately, and Jade saw a triumph gleaming there that made her stomach clench with dread. She looks pleased with herself, Jade observed. That's about to change, Marcus replied grimly. They worked the room together, Marcus's business instincts on full display as he navigated conversations with board members, investors, and competitors. Jade found herself genuinely enjoying the interactions, her natural warmth and intelligence winning over even the most skeptical observers. You're a natural at this, Marcus told her during a quiet moment, his arm around her waist as they watched couples dancing. I learned from the best, she replied, meaning it. Over the past months, she'd watched Marcus's command rooms with nothing but presence and intelligence, and she'd absorbed those lessons. When dinner was announced, they took their seats at the head table. Victoria was seated directly across from them, her smile sharp as a blade. Throughout the meal, she regaled their table mates with stories of Marcus's childhood, each anecdote carefully chosen to paint him as cold and calculating. Marcus was always so focused, she said, cutting into her salmon with surgical precision. Even as a boy, he approached relationships like business deals. Everything had to benefit him somehow. Jade felt Marcus tense beside her and placed her hand over his on the table, squeezing gently. That's what makes him such an amazing husband, she said smoothly. He approaches our marriage like it's the most important deal of his life. The words were carefully chosen, and she saw understanding flicker in Marcus's eyes. Several people at the table smiled approvingly, and Victoria's expression soured slightly. When it came time for speeches, Marcus rose first, commanding attention with his natural authority. His words about the company's achievements were eloquent and inspiring, but when he turned to acknowledge Jade, his voice softened with what sounded like genuine emotion. None of this would mean anything without someone to share it with, he said, his eyes locked on hers. My wife has reminded me that success without love is just an empty trophy. The applause was thunderous, and Jade felt tears prick her eyes. Even knowing it was performance, the words affected her deeply. Then Victoria stood, and the room fell silent. How lovely, she began, her voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. Young love is such a beautiful thing. Of course, some of us remember when Marcus swore he'd never marry, that love was a weakness he couldn't afford. Her smile was poisonous. But then, desperate times call for desperate measures. Jade felt the blood drain from her face. This was it. Victoria was about to expose them. I have here, Victoria continued, pulling out a document, some very interesting findings about the timeline of this romance, ... But before she could continue, Marcus stood again, his presence commanding immediate attention. You're absolutely right, Victoria, he said, his voice carrying across the silent room. I did say those things. I was wrong. He turned to Jade, and what she saw on his face took her breath away. This wasn't performance. This was truth, raw and unguarded, he said, holding out his hand to her. Would you stand up, please? On shaking legs, she rose, taking his offered hand. Marcus turned back to the crowd, but his eyes remained on her face. 6 months ago, I would have told you that love was a liability in business, that marriage was just another contract to negotiate. I was the most arrogant kind of fool, the kind who thinks he has everything figured out. His free hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing across her skin. Then I met this incredible woman who challenged everything I thought I knew. She saw past the money and the power to the man underneath, and somehow decided he was worth loving. Jade's heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Marcus, ... I love you, Jade Blackwood, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Not because it's convenient or profitable, but because you make me want to be the man you see when you look at me. The room erupted in applause, but Jade barely heard it. Marcus was looking at her like she was his entire world. She realized with crystal clarity that somewhere along the way, their fake marriage had become the realest thing in her life. I love you too, she whispered, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Marcus's smile was radiant as he pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that left no doubt in anyone's mind about the truth of their feelings. They broke apart. Victoria was nowhere to be seen, and the crowd was on its feet. Later, in the privacy of their penthouse, they finally talked about what had happened. "Did you mean it?" Jade asked as they stood on the terrace. The city lights spread out below them. Marcus turned from the railing, his expression serious. Every word. "I know this started as a business arrangement, but somewhere along the way, you became the most important deal I've ever made." He moved closer, his hands settling on her waist. "I want to renegotiate our contract." "What new terms did you have in mind?" she asked breathlessly. "Lifetime commitment, no expiration date, and a renegotiation of sleeping arrangements." Shh, laughed, winding her arms around his neck. "I think those terms are acceptable, Mr. Blackwood." "Good," he murmured against her lips. "Because I was prepared to negotiate very aggressively for this deal, Mrs. Blackwood." As Marcus carried her inside, Jade reflected on how she'd come looking for a job and found something infinitely more valuable, a love worth everything they'd risked to find it.